All right, we are moving now to the midpoint of our semester, and we finally move away from raster imaging, from pixel-based imaging, and we're going to learn something new, which is vector design. So that's in Unit 9. Remember, your group presentations are still being worked on. Those are found under Unit 8. But Unit 9 is what we will be working on immediately when you come back from spring break. And I want you to know what it is so you can start thinking about it, maybe start sketching a little bit for it, because this is something different. What would you call these things? Logos, right? So there are actually 3 types of logos that are used. One is what's called a combined mark. A combined mark has a pictorial logo, or sometimes called an iconic logo, which is a picture, and a logotype, which is just text, together. Pictorial logos are just the image on its own. Logotypes are just text on their own. Right? So what is this one for socially distanced MasterCard? Is it a pictorial logo, a logotype, or a combined mark? It's a combined mark. Very good. For this project, we're going to learn our beginning of logo design with pictorial logo design. So we are not doing type design yet. We will be doing that a little bit later. But both type design and pictorial logos are vectors. And we'll talk about why. So in this unit, there's quite a bit to it. There's your next question of the day, your third one out of 4 for the semester. And it's all about understanding what vectors are versus raster, and when it's good to use them and when it's not good to use them. It's kind of an important skill from this semester. So this will introduce you to it. I give you full slides on it here, which can be good to look at and help, along with that video that we looked at briefly at the very beginning of the course by a past student explaining the differences, a very pro-vector student. You can see the difference between vector and logo. What's the biggest advantage? Vectors can be infinitely scaled from one file and always be clean. There's never that kind of stair-stepping you get with pixels. This is a thing of the past, right? So vectors are always, the curves are perfectly smooth. They're not made up of square pixels. So we talked about logos. Pictorial logos, primarily just a picture, iconic. They do not need text to be understood. Logotypes are only text. Maybe the most famous logotype on the planet would be Coca-Cola. It has never had a pictorial logo that goes with it. A polar bear doesn't count. Right? So, logotypes. Notice that these are both equally designed. One's not easier than the other. Combined marks put them together. And when I grew up through the 80s as a kid, we would only ever see the Nike logo as a combined mark, with both the logotype and the swoosh together. In the 90s, they started separating them out, and now you'll see them used independently on products and on stuff, but you won't usually ever see them together. Does that make sense? Starbucks has gotten rid of its combined mark, its logotype features, and now just is purely pictorial, which in a lot of ways is better. Some are integral as a combined mark. Like Burger King, you can't really separate the text from the image, right? It's all part of it. NBC, sometimes you'll see separated. Target, you'll see separated a lot. So what is a good logo? It has to be clear, engaging, and versatile. A good logo is not super detailed. A good logo is not hard to understand what you're looking at, right? It needs to work in any size. That's where the versatility is. It needs to be small enough and still readable to go on a business card in a tiny corner of it, and still interesting enough as a shape if it gets printed the size of a skyscraper to keep your attention. So less is usually more when it comes to good logo design. Fewer colors, fewer complex shapes, whatever you need to get your strong approach. We are going to be designing what everyone designs for logo design first, and I have examples of it in all 3 categories, which is what's called a black shape logo. And we're going to do it as a vector. You always design it first as a black shape, because then that can be the most versatile. That can be used to create embroidery in any color. That can be used to make stainless steel cutouts. That can be used to make any kind of color variation. So like the Mac logos that are on your computers, that's just a black shaped logo, but they have rainbow versions of it. They have grayscale, gradient versions of it. They have drop shadow versions of it. But the main logo is just a black shape. Now there are 3 approaches that you're going to sketch for your vector design. This is going to be proving ground number 2, which is part of this unit. You're going to sketch your idea as a central symmetrical design. Doesn't mean it has to be perfect symmetry. Notice that the NBC peacock is not perfect symmetry. The beak goes off to one side, right? But like the Target logo, which is the most central symmetrical logo I could think of, they always grow from the middle out, and they're always balanced from the middle. So you'll see a lot of logos like that. The next approach is dynamic. Dynamic avoids horizontals and verticals. It relies mostly on diagonals and curves, and it's meant to move the eye at speed. So when you look at it, your eye speeds up, and it gives it energy. My favorite is the Rio de Janeiro Olympics logo here. It kind of just spins your eye out of control. And then the third, which is less common, but really cool and a good way to think in terms of design, is how to get more out of just a black shape. These are not black and white logos. They are just black shapes, right? But that black shape has to go onto a background. And so if you think of that background as being the negative space, you can make shapes out of the negative space, like the USA logo, which only is shapes for the U and the A, but in the space between makes the S. Does that make sense? Or the city here that's made by the key. Or the giraffe and the rhinoceros that's made by the elephant. Okay. So what does a professional example of these look like? This is for an otter. These are pretty standard kind of clip art vector logos, but here's a central symmetrical otter logo. Just black shapes, right? Here's a dynamic, just black shapes otter logo. And this could work as just black shapes. I think it would actually work even better. It's an animation and he blinks. It's kind of fun. But I think it works even better if the light blue was taken out entirely, right? And the dark blue was just black. It would still work as a positive negative space logo because it's talking about water and the otter. So it becomes a sea otter, right? With positive and negative space. But either way it works because the face of the otter is made with the negative space. Can you see that distinction? Yeah. Yes, those are what are called the guide shapes. This is showing how that vector was created. And these are not created by me. These are just ones I found. Now let's go to examples created by me and what we'll be doing in class. Really rough sketches. You're going to have an idea for the symbol you want to create. Our theme is going to be a personal patriotic sigil, which means a symbol, that shows your personal patriotism. But you get to define patriotism any way you like. It does not need to be related to the armed services, even though you'll have the option to have this included in a mural design for our Veteran Center. But patriotism is love of country, right? So you find what you love about country and you blend it with your personality. Even if you're pretty critical of things our country has done or how it operates, it's helpful to think of like what things can you stand behind and put that in a symbol. We have patriotism in lots of ways. Like school spirit is kind of a more localized view of patriotism, like for Northeast Lakeview. And we have symbols for Northeast Lakeview, like our mascot of Nico the Nighthawk. I'm a little biased because I designed him, but Nico the Nighthawk here I've designed as kind of graphic logos because mascots are not the same as logos. So here's a central symmetrical approach. The only difference is we're not going to use text in ours, right? So you're not going to use any kind of letters, but just the image. This is dynamic approach, and this has text hidden in the helmet. That would be okay, but still. And then this is positive negative. I actually like the positive negative one a lot, but the students that semester voted on this one, so that's the one I did. But that's a hawk's head in the positive space, right? And then the negative space is a silhouette of a knight. So you get a night hawk, Very clever. There's even a little N hidden in there. Okay, so then what do? Once we pick our sketch, we figure out where the black shapes go, right? Because this is a different solution than this. They look similar, but the black shapes are at different places, even though they all come from the same outline. So this is what's called a refined sketch. And it helps you understand exactly where you want your shapes to go. And then we use that refined sketch to make it into a vector logo. And this might look just like the refined sketch, but it is not. This is made with pixels. This is done as a vector. And it's an intentionally, it has what's called a distressing texture put onto it as a vector that's cut away from it so that it looks like it's an old type of printing. But it could very easily just be solid black as well. And then this is the color version. When you do your designs, this is what we're doing. Shaped logos. Versatile. Need to work small. We are doing this later. These are Day of the Dead Nico examples. This is illustration. Illustration is not meant to be so versatile. Illustration is used for a use purpose, like a t-shirt design or a poster. A logo needs to scale up and down. So you want to think of big, bold shapes. You can hand sketch your refined sketch. Once you pick your approach, you can composite it. Doesn't really matter as long as you're thinking in terms of big shapes. Does that make sense? And this was what I used for the fall for this same theme, right? As a personal patriotic one. I kind of took the Navy's symbol and I just turned it into a Nico the Nighthawk, right? And I made it an olive branch instead of an anchor. And then you trace it in a program like Illustrator or vector.com, which is a freeware that you can play with to make our vectors. And it's linked in the assignment as well. And then there's lots of tips that we'll learn about vector design in those slides. Okay, that's all in the question of the day. This is just a reminder not to use AI because your words are what I want to see, even if the grammar or spelling is not perfect. It's about your understanding. Here's our past student examples for assignment 4. You can see we're going to do a sketch and then a black shape and then a color variation, right? But that all starts with proving ground number 2. Proving ground number 2 is where we sketch our idea first central symmetrically, then dynamically, then with the play of positive negative space. It's fun to think of your personal patriotic symbol as maybe a mashup of two things. So this was like a mashup of butterflies and electricity. Right? It was for a different theme, but you can see how that's kind of explored in each of these. This was a mashup of a bull and a fork, right? Because it's for Forkin' Bull Barbecue. And you can see the different approaches. Again, we're not going to use text in ours. So, what is our theme? Well, in our assignment 4, at the bottom, you're going to see what this semester's theme is. We share it with the fall semester, so I need to update that. Because everything we're doing, from the fall semester classes to the spring semester classes, is going to be used with the student's permission. You'll sign like a rights contract for it if you want to donate it. This is our service learning project. It's going to be used as a mural in our new Veteran Center. So 2025, spring. And usually I'll change the theme every semester, but because we need a lot of these symbols for my vision of what these murals would be, and I wanted as many students to be able to contribute as possible, this is kind of how it's going to work. You're going to create your personal patriotic symbols, right? And then I'm going to use those to create a mural that fits whatever size they want, because they haven't told me yet, which is a little annoying, in the Veteran Center, layering your different designs together. And you'll all be listed as student contributors. You can see examples of these wall murals in Paluxy Hall. We have 2 of them that the digital art class did. One's at the 2nd floor elevator landing that's closer to the social media room. And the other one is in the 1st floor student break room. And you'll see the little plaques and like all the student contributors. So that's what you're invited to do for service learning this semester. All right. What is your personal patriotic symbol going to look like? It's totally up to you.